Entering the medieval world.
Close your eyes and let the noise of the modern world drift away. No cars, no electricity, no glowing screens. Instead, the sound of a rooster crowing at dawn. The faint smoke of a fire curling from a thatched roof. The crunch of boots on muddy paths. This is the world of the medieval peasant. It is the year 1250. Europe is a patchwork of kingdoms, dukedoms, and small villages scattered across endless countryside. The grand castles of kings and lords rise in some places. But beneath their walls, in far greater numbers, live the people who made the world run. The peasants. Farmers, laborers, shepherds, mothers, children. Ordinary people. Their lives rarely recorded, their names often forgotten. They lived close to the earth. They woke with the sun, worked with their hands, and fell asleep by firelight. Their lives were filled with hardship, yet also moments of tenderness and quiet joy. To understand their story, we must step into their shoes. Walk their muddy paths. Feel the weight of their struggles, and the small warmths that made survival possible. This is not the history of battles or kings. This is the story of how peasants survived famine, plague, and the power of their lords. It is a quiet story. A slow story. A story for drifting into rest. Picture a medieval village. Perhaps 50, perhaps 100 people. A few dozen huts huddled together. Each hut small, built of wood and mud, its roof covered in straw. Inside, the air is smoky. There is a single hearth at the center. The fire gives light, heat, and a place to cook. But there is no chimney. So the smoke lingers, stinging the eyes. The floor is packed earth. The bed is straw, covered with rough blankets. In winter, children and parents may all sleep together, sharing warmth. Sometimes, even the animals are brought in, a pig, or chickens, or a goat. The village is alive with sound. Dogs barking. Children laughing, chasing each other across muddy lanes. The clang of the blacksmith's hammer. The creak of a cart's wooden wheels. At the heart of it all stands the church. Its small bell rings, marking prayer and time. Here the community gathers for worship, festivals, and burials. The manor house also stands nearby. It is not always a castle, sometimes just a larger wooden hall. But it is a constant reminder of power. The Lord, or his steward, collects rents, labor, and obedience. Life here is simple, but never easy. Meals are plain: bread, porridge, onions, beans. Meat is rare, often eaten only on holidays. Children help with chores from an early age, fetching water, tending animals, gathering firewood. And yet, despite the hardship, there is community. Neighbors help one another at harvest. Weddings and feast days bring dancing and laughter. By the fire at night, stories are told, of saints, of heroes, of ghosts in the forest. This is the rhythm of the village. Hardship and hunger, yes. But also human warmth. This is where survival begins. The peasant's life was shaped by the seasons. Spring *** meant plowing. Heavy wooden plows cut into the soil, pulled by oxen or horses. Men guided the plow, while women followed, scattering seeds. Children carried water, or scared away birds that might steal the grain. Summer ** was weeding, tending, and watching the crops grow. Vegetable gardens were cared for. Livestock were moved to pastures. Wool was spun, tools repaired. Autumn was the busiest time, the harvest. Wheat and barley were cut with sickles. Women tied sheaves, children gathered stalks, men loaded carts. The whole community worked side by side. For weeks, labor did not stop until the grain was safely stored. Winter was quieter, but harder in other ways. Food stores were counted carefully. Hunger was common when supplies ran low. Families mended clothing, sharpened tools, and hoped to see spring again. The work was endless, but it was life itself. Without labor, there was no bread, no survival. And through it all, peasants lived close to nature. The soil beneath their hands, the weather always on their minds. They feared storms, drought, and frost. But they also cherished the smell of fresh-cut hay, the warmth of a good harvest, the sight of grain bending in the wind. Work was survival. And survival was work. But sometimes, the land failed. Between 1315 and 1317 came one of the worst famines in medieval history. It began with heavy rains. The skies darkened, and fields flooded. Grain rotted in the ground. Hay spoiled, cattle starved. For 2 years, harvests failed. Bread grew scarce. Prices soared. Chroniclers wrote of people boiling nettles, eating bark, even chewing leather to quiet their hunger. Children were abandoned. Whole villages wasted away. Even in less terrible years, famine was always a threat. Too much rain, too little sun, an early frost, any could tip a family into starvation. For peasants, survival meant sharing. Neighbors stretched what little they had. A family might grind beans or peas into bread when grain was gone. Nettles, acorns, and roots became food. The fear of famine haunted every winter. Would there be enough to last until spring? Would the grain stores hold? And yet, somehow, most endured. They learned patience. They learned to live with hunger. They prayed, they shared, and they endured until the land gave life again. As if famine were not enough, another shadow came. The Black Death. In 1347, it reached Europe. Carried by ships, by rats, by fleas. At first, it was whispers, a sick crew, a strange fever. But soon, whole villages were stricken. Boils swelled on the body. Fevers burned. Death came within days. Some villages lost half their people. Some were abandoned altogether. Imagine the toll. The church bell ringing endlessly. Fields left unplowed, because no one was left. Children crying for parents who would never return. Peasants did not understand germs or bacteria. They spoke of foul air, or God's punishment. Doctors wore long-beaked masks filled with herbs, but they could not heal. And yet, some survived. They cared for neighbors. They carried the sick to churchyards. They rebuilt, slowly, after the plague passed. For peasants who lived through it, the plague was a memory of grief. But also a reminder, life, however fragile, could endure. Amid famine and plague, what gave peasants hope? Faith. The church stood at the center of village life. Its bell marked prayer. Its calendar gave rhythm to the year, Lent, Easter, Advent, Christmas. Religion offered comfort. Even suffering had meaning, they believed, in the eyes of God. The saints were prayed to for help with crops, for healing, for rain. But there was joy too. On feast days, work paused. Villages gathered for food, music, and dance. Ale flowed. Children played games. Stories and songs filled the night. Even in poverty, these moments mattered. They gave relief, laughter, and a sense of belonging. A peasant's life was not all misery. It was also laughter by a fire. The warmth of holding a child. The pride of a good harvest. These small joys were their strength. Peasants lived under lords. They worked the land, but the land was not theirs. They paid rents in grain, in labor, or in coin. They owed service, days spent plowing the Lord's fields, repairing his roads, carrying his goods. Sometimes the demands were heavy. Taxes, tithes to the church, duties to the manor. The weight could be crushing. And yet, peasants endured. Sometimes, they resisted. In 1381, in England, the peasants rose in rebellion. They marched to London, demanding freedom from feudal dues. For a moment, the world trembled. Although the revolt was crushed, it showed that peasants were not voiceless. In France, in 1358, another rising, the Jacquerie, saw peasants fighting back against their lords. Most peasants did not rebel. But these moments revealed their strength. Even the poorest could speak. Even the humble could resist, if pushed too far. When we think of the Middle Ages, we often picture kings, knights, and castles. But beneath them stood millions of peasants. Their names forgotten, their graves unmarked. They endured famine by sharing and stretching their food. They endured plague by caring for one another and rebuilding. They endured lords by patience, by labor, and sometimes by resistance. Their lives were hard. But they were also filled with quiet moments of beauty. The laughter of children. The glow of firelight. The relief of bread after hunger. The medieval peasant's life was one of endurance. Of survival. Of quiet strength. As the night deepens, imagine a small cottage, its fire burning low. Outside, the wind moves through the fields. Inside, a family sleeps on straw, safe for another night. Their world is gone. But their endurance lives on in the history they carried for us. And so, let the story of the medieval peasant, gentle, quiet, and steady, carry you into rest. Sleep well.